W- Welcome in to the Two Bucks Sports Podcast. It's another beautiful evening here. I got my co-host Uncle Buck. Uncle Buck, it is nice for both of us to be in the 662. We're not in the same house, same zip code yet, but it's nice being back in North Mississippi. Welcome to the podcast, sir.
Hey man, good to be here. We're a day early because Rusty decided he was going to go see a Grizzlies game tomorrow night instead of keep our scheduled podcast date. But that's okay. We are in the same same area code, but we have not made it to the same zip code. But he is close enough to where I can smell him.
That's not necessarily a good thing either.
So yeah, man.
But yeah, man. Yeah, I'm going to the Grizzlies game tomorrow night. It's my nephew's Christmas present. I promised him I'd take him to a game, and tomorrow night just fits the schedule. Plus, Dame Lillard's on a hot streak. It'll be nice to watch him play, be back in the Forum for the first time this year. First time since we were there last year for the Zebo jersey retirement.
Yeah, and that was a night to remember. That was a great game.
Yeah.
And out of all the Grizzlies games I've seen, I don't believe I've ever seen Portland. I've never seen Dame play, and he is a bucket list guy for me. And we were going to go, but it looks like with my job being to keep the power on, it looks like there's a good possibility that the power will be going out over the next 24 to 48 hours due to some ice. And so we're going to stay close to home tomorrow night.
Yeah, you'll be missed. I'll be sure to let you know how the Forum's doing. Check in on the guys, the Steven Adamless Grizzlies, and see Danny Green in his first game as a Memphis Grizzly. And hope Dame continues the hot streak, but that the Grizz continue their 20-3 record. Let's go ahead and make it 21-3 tomorrow night.
Yeah. Yeah, and Dame has had a really good year, but the team as a whole has not been very good.
They stink.
Yeah, it's kind of that weird dichotomy when you got a superstar playing at superstar levels, and you've even got really solid role players like Anthony Simons, who's just really coming into being a real reliable, really good secondary player there, and just can't quite figure it out.
Yeah, something's missing in the team element of it. Dame's having a career year, but yeah, that team just overall is not a great team. But, the Grizzlies typically get everybody's best effort. We've seen that in games against the Pacers, against the Magic, against the Kings. Like when you're one of the top seeds, you always get the best efforts. You're always going to have that X on your back. And so I don't anticipate anything else from Portland tomorrow night other than their best efforts. So it should be a good game, but hopefully another home win.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I hope you get to see one, not only because you're there, but because I just like seeing the Grizzlies win.
Yeah. Yeah. Regardless of me, we want to see
the. Yeah. So, all right. So we've got another draft tonight. This is becoming a staple of the podcast. And as the seasons wane on and we have, as the summer gets here and spring and summer get here, we've got some baseball that creeps in and we've got basketball that winds down, but we may have some little time here in the podcast. And so this has become a little staple here that we've really enjoyed. And so today's draft that we're going to do, snake draft, is going to be favorite road trip snacks. And so, Rusty, you just made a 10.5-hour drive from South Carolina to North Mississippi. Mm-hmm. So you should have thought a lot about this because I'm sure you made a lot of these decisions today. And you have the first pick because it's your turn. So why don't you tell us who you're taking in the 101 for the road trip snack draft?
Yeah, Drew. So this morning left South Carolina real early, picked up some road snacks before too far down the road. And the first thing I stopped and picked up was my number one road trip food, and that's beef jerky. Always got to get beef jerky. I prefer like the pepper, a little bit more spicy, but the teriyaki, the original, the snack sticks. It's hard to go wrong with beef jerky in any way that you can get it. But beef jerky is my number one go-to road snack.
Deer jerky, and I'm not a hunter. I'm not a hunter of any kind really, but deer jerky is incredible, and it's really ruined just the standard Jack Link's Slim Jims vein of jerky, and so I like it. I like my jerky to be really tough and chewy. It takes a while to eat it. Or how you got it in middle school in the Skull cans.
Yep.
The old gas station Skull can beef jerky. That was the best way to do it back before, when you were like 14 and you needed to wait another year to start dipping. We were in college. If you didn't start at 15, you were behind.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. And I saw a funny meme today, and it had a picture of the shredded jerky in a can, and
Right, right.
cigarettes, and then a little pipe that you blew bubbles out of, and it said, "Here, kids, tobacco will kill you, but you look cool using it."
Right. Absolutely. And that's what it taught us is that,
Yeah,
your dad dips and you can almost dip or you can look like you dip by
right.
having skull canned beef jerky and you can slip it in your back pocket and give your mom a heart attack because it's happened to
Oh
all
yeah.
of us. So,
Yes, it has.
so there's for reasons I just told you, beef jerky wasn't high on my list because the beef jerky that you get at the gas station just really isn't up my alley, even though it does serve a purpose and it's not terrible. But I only get 5 picks and it wasn't going to make the top 5 for me. So my first pick is what I get every time. And my wife and I, her sister lives in South Carolina, and I've got an aunt that lives in East Tennessee. It seems like once every 2 months or so, we pack the family up and we go for a weekend somewhere. And so we do a lot of traveling, and we've got indulge ourselves in a lot of road trip snacks. And the first thing I look for every time is the biggest bag of bold Chex Mix I can find.
Mm, yeah,
And
good one.
I could take Chex Mix, and if you don't want any of the Chex Mixes, I'll take them all. But the only one I eat is the bold, and I guess it just adds a lot of salt and pepper to it, just a bit extra flavor, and
The
it works
Worcestershire, I think the secret ingredient is Worcestershire.
fine with me because I love Worcestershire. But this particular snack works well for me and the wife because I don't like those pretzels, and she could just eat a whole bag of the pretzels. So I just give her a little treats as I come across a pretzel. And,
Yeah,
and
everybody knows that the little checks and the wafers are the best part.
oh yeah, absolutely. And with my second pick, it is my favorite snack. Period. It's what I get anytime I'm craving something sweet and I'm in a gas station. It's the peanut M&Ms.
Mm.
It's the superior way to eat M&Ms. And if you had to get rid of the original M&Ms, then that would be fine as long as I can keep the peanut M&Ms.
Yeah. Peanut M&Ms are up on my list. They wouldn't be my favorite M&Ms. We'll get to that in just a minute.
Well, that's the
But peanut
difference
M&Ms
between
are hard
mine
to
and
beat.
your list, Rusty. The difference between mine and your list is my list is great, and your list is like average.
So far, I'm off to a pretty good start with beef jerky. I think our listeners will agree, but feeling pretty good about that.
Well, go on with your next pick then.
So my next pick is a good combination. I am much more of a salty guy. I like salty snacks. I like all that kind of stuff. But sometimes I like that good mix, and a salty sweet mix is hard to beat. And so my second pick will be trail mix. I like it with
Mm.
like the M&Ms, the pretzels, the peanuts, all the stuff in it. I can take or leave raisins. They don't have to be in there, but I like a good trail mix. Walmart has the best one. It's a peanut butter trail mix. It's got like Reese's Pieces and little peanut butter, little chips in it. But trail mix is my next go-to
You see, and
road trips.
you stole trail mix from me, but the elite trail mix flavor is that what is it called? Um it's like a sweet and spicy. It's got the little
Oh yeah.
it's got
Yeah.
the big nuts that are covered in like it reminds me of that caramel popcorn you get at Christmas
Yep.
time. And then all surrounding that is
Yep.
like spicy peanuts and everything. That's the superior trail
Yep.
mix. And anything with raisins on it is garbage. Real quick
You're
story.
not wrong in that aspect, my friend.
I got to tell you about this story about raisins. And so my daughter was sitting around, my 8-year-old, sitting around and eating some raisins. And she just looked at me and she said, Uncle Buck, she said, I love raisins. And it's just so fascinating to me that they come out of dried blueberries. And I said, sweetheart, those are grapes.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, still on the clock. First pick of
Yeah.
the third round. My third road trip snack is the superior M&M, and that is the peanut butter M&Ms. Love that chocolate peanut butter combination. I know you're a huge peanut butter fan. So peanut butter M&Ms would be my next choice of road trip snacks.
Yeah, I mean, I do like peanut butter, but that's not the superior form of M&M. And so I'll just move on then. So, because I'm scared I'm coming across as being being a hater, but I just genuinely don't like any of these. I'm just kidding. I would just pick the other flavor. Is all it is.
There you go.
I have got the bold Chex Mix and the peanut M&Ms. And next for me is just the standard greatest hit when it comes to gas station road trip food. It's the gummy bears. Haribo gummy bears, the biggest bag you can find. You can just you can have a handful of them and pop them in just like Tic Tacs, just one after the other. Or you can be bold and shove the whole handful in your mouth. Then you're going to drool a little bit on your shirt. So just whatever mode or whatever vehicle you use to get them to your mouth, whatever style is fine with me, as long as they're the Haribo Gold Pack gummy bears.
Can't beat those. There's the Albanese are pretty good, but it's hard to beat the Haribos. Yeah, it's the GOAT, man. Oh, took it off my list.
Yep. And I've got another pick here, snake draft. So my back-to-back picks even sneak up on me, even though I know what's coming. So the fourth round pick, the first pick of the fourth round here, we're going to do 5. I'm going to go with kind of a niche. You know, if you've had it, if you know what I'm saying? And if you go to Love's truck stop and go to those rollers and get you those taquitos, and you can go get like 3 for $2 or something like that. Whatever flavor they've got rolling and hot there, just get you a bag full of those taquitos, and it can almost be a meal. If you lower your standards a little bit, you can call it Mexican food for lunch.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely. Used to get those at the Aggie Mart back in the day when I was in high school. They had those, usually pretty hot and ready, and so those are hard to beat, man.
Right. All right. So you're up. Well, you got 2 more picks to round out your draft.
Got 2 more picks. So again, as I said earlier, I'm more of a salty guy. I've got a couple sweets on here, but I'm much more of a salty guy. So I love some chips on a road trip. But there's a very specific brand of chips that I like. And again, this is probably a niche pick, but if you know, you know. And if you love them, you love them. And it's the Zapp's Voodoo Chips. They are the greatest chips mankind has ever known. I recognize it's probably a niche audience there, like my sports movies last week. But I'm hoping those of you that are listening that agree with me will come out and vote in force for our on our social medias, because those Voodoo Chips are the GOAT potato chips.
Yeah, I've never had those before. What would you compare those to?
So they're like a Cajun barbecue. So they're kind of like a barbecue chip with a little, not a lot of spice, but enough to notice it. I'm telling you, they're very unique. Zapp's Voodoo Chips. I have not introduced them to anybody, and they were sad about it. So,
yeah, okay.
Zapp's
well,
Voodoo
I
Chips.
guess I'll have to check those out.
So I'm educating you a little bit.
I've got let's see.
I got one more.
You got one
more pick.
Right.
I got my the first of the 5th round snake style. You get the last pick. Salty guy, not a big sweet guy for road trips. Helps me stay awake. My last one is the Smart Food white cheddar popcorn in the big black bag. It's a staple of my road trips. You get that like cheesy kind of salty flavor. Gets all over your fingers, which is totally fine. You get to enjoy that snack a little bit longer, but make your steering wheel a little sticky. But the Smart Food white cheddar popcorn is my last pick of the road trip snacks.
All right. Well, I've got a little bit of I've got a list here that just makes me hungry. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't need these just for road trips. Because I'm looking at this, I'm like, well, I mean, you could pair 2 or 3 of these together and call it lunch, Yeah. But one that I would not consider just for lunch, but it is a solid road trip snack, is peanuts. Just your standard spicy peanuts. And you can go get them in the bag. You can get like 3 for $1, 2 for $1, whatever it is. Go get you just a whole sack full of peanuts, and it's real nice because you just tear the corner of them. You just dump them straight in your mouth. You don't have to worry about making a mess in the car. It is, it's an easy pick that I'm surprised that I was left with at the end.
Yeah, I thought about peanuts. I got those in my trail mix, but peanuts by themselves stand alone, especially like you said, those individual packs are hard to beat. get you some honey roasted, get some regular salted. Peanuts are a good choice.
Honey roasted are the
honorable.
best.
Give me a couple honorable mentions. I know you had a couple more, then I've got a couple, and we'll close out our lists.
We didn't prepare much for this podcast, so I kind of just shouted them out as I picked them as I've thought about them, which has made me a little bit surprised at how well I feel like I've done on this draft. So maybe I'm just really good at road trip snacking. But what didn't make my list? Sour worms is another one. That sour gummy worms. My wife, I never buy them, but I always steal a couple of my wife's when she buys them. And those sour straws. My wife is a child at heart. She's a kindergarten teacher, and so she shares a lot of the same appetite as a kindergartner. Sometimes loves those sour straws, and so she has gotten in the car before and started drinking a Gatorade out of a sour straw, and I was just like, "How old are you?" And I think we may have lost Rusty. Hold on. Come back to me. There we go.
I'm back. I'm muted. I bumped my mouse and I muted myself. Yeah, sour straws are the way to go. Any kind of like Sprite or anything through those is really good. For a couple honorable mentions, in the same vein of the taquitos, I do love the Lowe's hot dogs. Hot and ready, rolling on there. They're usually like 2 for $3.33 or something like that. The Lowe's hot dogs are good. And then back on my sweet, I don't eat a lot of sweets, but the only time, there's 2 occasions that I'll eat Little Debbie snack outside of the Christmas trees. They're standalone. We've already addressed those. But oatmeal cream pies on a road trip.
Yeah.
Because they've got those double deckers, like $1 at the gas station, and those slap on a road trip. Give me that and a cup of coffee.
You know what I hit up for breakfast if we get off or head out early in the morning? It's always a cup of coffee and powdered donuts. That's my go-to.
Yeah, I mean that's hard to beat, man. But for me, it's a cup of coffee, and a morning road trip is a cup of coffee and oatmeal cream pie. I also eat those during deer season, like it's going out of style. Me and my Little Debbie's, I got a fanny pack that I hunt with, and they're full of Little Debbie's oatmeal cream pies.
There you go.
And it passes the time.
There you go.
But yeah, so that's our draft. So Drew, I took beef jerky with my first pick, trail mix with my second, third was peanut butter M&Ms, fourth was the Zapp's Voodoo Chips, and the fifth was Smart Food white cheddar popcorn.
Yeah, with my first pick, I took the bold Chex Mix, followed by peanut M&Ms, gummy bears, the taquitos on the rollers at Love's gas stations and truck stops, and then just your individual packages of peanuts. However flavor you want to do it, mix and match it, whatever you want to do. The peanuts on the end of the aisle there at every gas station. You know where they're at everywhere. Yeah. That was my last pick.
Consistent. Yeah. So, guys, again, please get on. We enjoy the feedback from the audience. Get on and vote on our social medias. This will be posted when the podcast gets posted. And if we missed any, if we've got any favorites that we missed, drop them in the comments. Let us know what we missed, where we messed up. We love interacting with our fans. So please tell us where we were wrong, where we were right. Give us some ideas that we might have missed.
Absolutely. And so we've broken the ice here on this podcast with a little fun non-sports topic. So let's get into what we watched on Sunday. And I believe both of us, I talk as if there's a group. Nope, just still me and Rusty. We both watched a lot of football on Sunday and watched the Grizzlies kind of on at the same time as the late game. So let's start at the morning game. Started off rough. We had the Eagles and 49ers, and in a game that both of these games, I was big into that Chiefs Bengals game. I thought it was going to be great. It's my favorite game of the day, but it was just a little bit sexier going into it than that 49ers Eagles game. And the carpet was pulled out from under us quick, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasted no time. Man, I thought we were going to get a good game. 2 great defenses, 2 offenses that are very efficient, can move the football with some great playmakers. And Brock Purdy early on, the 49ers, first of all, in that first half had no answer for Hassan Reddick. he was an absolute menace off the end. He got to Brock Purdy early, hit him in the elbow as he was throwing. Turns out to have a UCL injury. That's common for those don't know much about that. That's the Tommy John ligament that baseball pitchers often have to have replaced. And looking at surgery potentially, but they're still getting some second opinions. But after that, man, the 49ers just fell off a cliff. Insert Josh Johnson in his 13th year in the league, 15th year. I forgot he was still in the league, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know it was his 13th team. If you're being honest with you, I could see it. I could probably remember a season where he played for more than one team in the same season.
Yeah, I think he entered the league in like 2009. He was a product of Kansas State. He was good in the Big 12. He was like Big Ben body style, big quarterback, threw the ball really well, but he just didn't have it the other night.
Oh boy, he looked like he was there for the good time. He was on the team for a free trip to Arizona to the Super Bowl, hopefully going to piggyback his way into a Super Bowl ring and play some good golf. And instead, they you got to play, brother. And he was not ready. Let me tell you.
No, he couldn't get the ball down the field. He wasn't making good decisions. The 49ers, you and I were texting. I guess not everybody can play in Kyle Shanahan's system because he did not look the part at all.
Well, and let's be honest here. When you're at your fourth string Quarterback, everybody on Twitter was like, man, Josh Johnson sucks. I was like, I mean, come on. Yeah. He is the fourth option for this team. They started out with Trey Lance, and he didn't make it a half. And then they had to go back to the well. They thought that they had finally broken up with Jimmy G, but they had to go back and beg for forgiveness. And then for him to get injured and then to go to Brock Purdy. And the fact that he was even good as Mr. Irrelevant practice squad quarterback who nobody even thought about as an NFL player. There was nobody that was saying, man, Brock Purdy should be playing. No. Nobody wanted Brock Purdy to be playing. Nobody was banging that drum. And then for him to be good, I mean, that tells me all I need to know about Shanahan's offense. But then you got to go to the next guy. I mean, they were talking about, is Christian McCaffrey a better option? So
his last name, but he was the other option. Those are Juszczyk, thank you. Yeah, those are their other two options.
Yeah, and so you couple
Christian McCaffrey did. Go ahead.
Okay. But you couple the fourth string quarterback with the fact that the Eagles had just decided, okay, they're playing a fourth string quarterback. We're just going to man up everything and just going to knock him to the ground as many times as possible. And he was seeing shadows, and when he wasn't seeing shadows, he was seeing defenders just knocking him out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Chris McCaffrey did his best to take the heat off. He had that grown man touchdown run, but the Eagles smelled blood in the water, and they turned the pressure up. They manned up Darius Slay and those guys on the outside, and Hassan Reddick knocked out a second quarterback when he sacked Josh Johnson and took him down hard, and Johnson's head bounced off the turf. He got that concussion, and so then what do you do, right? That's when they're talking about CMC. Well, all of a sudden, we see Brock Purdy warming up on the sideline. He's throwing the ball a little bit like, okay, maybe back, and he comes back and he throws one screen pass to Christian McCaffrey, and then for the next two quarters they just ran the football and essentially circled the wagons.
It was one of those. He said after the game it came out that his arm went numb, and so he was going to give it a shot because, I mean, what else can you do? It's the last game of the year potentially, so give it what you got. You're going to have surgery one way or the other. Turned out what he had left was just not good, and what it turned into, it was a hard watch for the last half of that game, the last half of the third quarter on whenever Josh Johnson got hurt. Really, after Purdy got hurt, what we realized that it was over at that point. Then once you saw Josh Johnson get hurt, it was just like, man, this just stinks. And good for Philly because, man, I'm telling you, I believe their biggest liability may be how good is Jalen Hurts going to be throwing the ball if you're putting him in a situation where he has to throw the ball. But, man, you're talking about weapons on the outside, and then the defense has just got playmakers all over the place, and they can rush the passer with the best of them. And so, if you're looking at quarterback matchup, you're taking Kansas City. But if you're looking outside of that, I mean, Philadelphia can line it up with the best of them. And shout out Hassan Reddick. He is from Philly, played at Temple, and then went to Siberia. Got drafted to Siberia to play for the Arizona Cardinals, and they just misused him for several years. And it turns out he's actually good, as we thought he
really
was.
Really good.
Yeah. Once he gets out.
Got out of purgatory, got to a system that works, got some better leaders like Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox that could let him make plays, and he has made plays, and he is firmly in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation this year. Just absolutely got after the quarterback and showed it again on Sunday afternoon. Really just kept the pressure up all game and just kept the 49ers out of it. Shout out Darius Slay, graduate of Mississippi State. Really didn't do much in high school. He was a 3-star recruit, went to Northeast Mississippi Community College. Drew and I both spent a little time there. Played a little football there before coming to Mississippi State, and then going on to big things in the NFL. So big shout out Darius Slay and getting the NFC Championship, and then moving us on to the second game. Had the opportunity to see who they would get to play. Drew, I know this is a game we were both looking forward to. We both were feeling the Bengals, but I was texting you a little bit heading in, and I was a little worried about all the disrespect Kansas City was getting. What were your thoughts on that second game?
I mean, that game was everything I wanted it to be, honestly. Kansas City came out and hit them in the mouth. The Bengals got the ball first and were forced to a 3-and-out. Kansas City's defense was, I think they sacked Joe Burrow 4 times in the first quarter. And so they just really popped them in the mouth early. And Kansas City fought back like they do every time. And when it came down, to sum up the whole game, the Kansas City fought back. But when it came down to it at the end, when you've got one drive to go win the game, the best player on the field showed up, and it was Chris Jones. And he was just unblockable when he got going.
Again, man, Hail State product of D-line U right now.
Oh, my God.
But product of Houston, Mississippi. Yeah, Chris Jones was unstoppable. He had 2 sacks early, had 5 quarterback hits. He had about 6 or 7 pressures, ended up with about 8 tackles. He just was all over the field, completely disruptive. And, I mean, a lot of it is Cincinnati's offensive line is not good. They haven't been great all year. It was a repeat of last year's Titans-Bengals game where Joe Burrow got sacked 9 times. Just got him beat up in the playoffs, and they're going to have to address that if they're going to keep training.
And lost.
And they still, and still lost.
Which
they're going to have to address that going forward.
Right.
Absolutely.
You talked a lot about, and I believe that there was a lot of bulletin board material, and you make a lot of that. And I tend to go the other way, and I know it's not popular, and it's something that's talked about on every sports talk radio ever. Kansas City feels disrespected. They're going to come out with extra fire and whatnot, and they did. It did come out, but my take on that is that fades. So you get out there and you're pumped, and you come out of that locker room, and what happens is you get that pregame speech, and your coach tells you they don't believe in you, they don't do this. They've disrespected you. They're calling this Burrowhead and going on and on and on. And they came out hot. But what happens when you manufacture excitement? Because the game is never won by excitement. But what happened is you manufactured that excitement, and you peaked, and you were better than them for the first half of the first quarter, if not the whole first quarter, because of that excitement. But what happened is then they started playing football. And what Kansas City, they weathered the first punch and then realized, we're just as good as them. And whereas Kansas City is hearing, well, they're not respecting us. They're calling this Burrowhead. We've never beat Joe Burrow. They're being cocky. And the other locker room, they're telling themselves, this is Burrowhead. We own them. We're better than them. We've never lost to them. And so it goes both ways. And so that whole back and forth then just, in my opinion, more times than not, evens out. And that's what you saw at the end of the game.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. I does light that fire early, and it can give you that extra ump. But at the end of the day, they're professional athletes. And if you need locker room material to get you fired up for a game, you got issues. But I do think, like you said, they came out a little bit hotter. It obviously mattered. Travis Kelce addressed both the Burrowhead controversy and the Cincinnati mayor. I inject that in my veins, man. No, you're rolling. Shut your mouth. We're WWF up there. Vince McMahon,
Oh
well,
man.
the former owner, Vince McMahon, probably hopped on the phone after and was like, "We got to get this guy."
I was out of my chair after when he finished. Know your role and shut your mouth. I was out of my chair, and then he called him a jabroni, and I just ripped my shirt clean off. I mean, it was. I was like, I would text you. I was like, that dude's got a career in the WWE.
Yeah.
He said jabroni, and nobody
Yeah.
says jabroni unless you're a fan of the WWE.
Unless you're in the squared circle. And so I could see him and his brother, Jason Kelsey, having a quite righteous tag team run in the WWE after their NFL career's over.
Yeah, the Kelsey brothers. I've never
gosh.
listened to their podcast. They've already got a podcast together that I see
good.
clips of pretty frequently. They're just characters. And I don't know if you remember when Philly won their last Super Bowl with Nick Foles championing the team right there. Jason Kelsey, almost said Travis. Jason Kelsey got up there on the podium in a full-blown Mardi Gras outfit. It's the only way I can describe it, with the fluffy crown, looked like the jester out there, and just gave a explicit talk to the whole city of Philadelphia. Live streamed on ESPN.
Yeah. But to the matters at hand, the Chiefs ended up pulling away. I'm excited to see, pull out the victory. I'm excited to see what that KC defense and Chris Jones can do against a much better Philly offensive line, because that Philly offensive line was dominant, and they play with a low pad level. They're a really good squad. Lane Johnson is hurt. He's got a torn groin, so we'll see how that kind of impacts you going forward. But really excited to see that. And like you said earlier, just a couple quick thoughts about the end of the game. Joe Shiesty, Joe Burrow, he's awesome. He's so much fun and swagger. But Pat Mahomes is still the GOAT when it comes down to that last drive. He steps up, he made plays. That his ankle was obviously bothering him. He's probably 60% at best, and just orchestrated a masterful couple of drives there late to get that win, get that field goal, which was set up by a great kick return, and then helped by some untimely mistakes by Cincinnati. But Pat Mahomes, man, he's the truth.
He was an absolute warrior, and that's one of those games that you look back on. I mean, that's the Jordan flu game. I mean, I don't think it's any stretch to think that, just like we look back at that Kansas City Buffalo game last year, I don't think it's any stretch that in 5 or 10 years we're looking back at this Mahomes game to see him lead that team in his 5th consecutive AFC Championship game at that. To do that with a gimpy wheel, I mean, it was just legendary stuff. And then you're right, when Chris Jones happened and Cincinnati had to punt, and then Sky Moore has that incredible return, I'm just like, okay, this is over. Like, I text you at that point, like, it's over. But then Cincinnati showed a little life, and they were left with 12 seconds to get into field goal range with no timeouts. And was it 4th down that Mahomes scrambled? It was third.
It was third and 6 or 7, and he gutted out that run.
That's
man.
right, because he had
that run.
If he didn't get it, they were kicking a really long field goal, and then he gutted out that run, and then right at the end, my God, I guess it was adrenaline. I guess it was the big fella couldn't check up in time, but just made a horrible, horrible mistake. And I feel bad for the guy, but as a person that was rooting for Cincinnati, if I was a diehard Cincinnati fan, man, I'm not feeling bad for you at all. It was just a horrible mistake, and I do feel bad for the guy. I hated that they kept putting the camera and zooming in on him on the side.
Oh, I know.
Just crying like he lost a loved one. It's a mistake you can't make. And the thing is that's a first down, but there's only 8 seconds left, and I don't believe they had any timeouts. And Butker is consistently amazing, but that was the outer part of his limit. In fact, the guy that they had on the kicking, was it AJ Feely? I think it was AJ Feely. He was like, go in this direction at 55 yards before the game. When he was warming up, he was short, and that's where he was at. And so he was going to have to kick that field goal if he's just out of bounds there at the 30. I think it was about the 37, 38-yard line. You're looking at a 55-yard kick to win it, and it's 20 degrees outside. If you don't have that penalty, maybe Kansas City runs one more play. I don't ever put anything past Patrick Mahomes. He may win it anyways. But if the choice is, commit the foul and he's got a relatively easy field goal, or not commit the foul and it's a 55-yard field goal, then yeah, man, that one's going to be on you.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel for Osai, or however you say his last name.
Osai,
I feel for him because Osai, Ossai, because the broadcast was just bragging on him about how great of a game he played.
He had an incredible game.
Some big plays, and they had just bragged on him. And then the next play, he had his momentum, and he couldn't stop. And it's one of those bang plays where he said in the post game, like, he could have cut back up field and got some more yards. I didn't realize where I was on the field. And credit Zach Taylor, the Bengals coach. He said, look, that's not what cost us the game. It was several plays that we had that we could have won the game.
Yeah,
that
every
one
coach
did not
is going to say that. And
but
he's
credit
right.
him for saying that.
He's right.
One thing that I
go ahead.
The one thing I didn't care for was his teammate, Big 57, calling him out on the way to the locker room about why you got to hit the explicit quarterback, and calling him out, heading to the locker room. Like, I appreciate the emotion, but I saw that on Twitter with him calling him out. And in the next frame on one of the Chiefs' touchdown drives that I think gave him the lead, or it gave him the lead that the Bengals ended up tying up, Isaiah Pacheco, he just ran right through, hit 57's chest. And so it's like, okay, bro, like, you're calling this guy out, but you missed too. Like, this is a team game. It's a team effort. That play sucked in the timing, but it wasn't the only one that cost him that game.
And emotions are running high, and it's probably something he wishes he could take back now, if I had to guess. The refs as a whole were bad in that game. However, it seemed like in the crucial times, it always went Kansas City's way, but Kansas City got their own fair share of calls too. The referees ended up being a real big story on that, and they no doubt did a horrible job. But I didn't leave that game, as somebody who was rooting for Cincinnati, and I'm not a Bengals fan or a homer. I was rooting for them, but I didn't leave that game thinking that the refs screwed Cincinnati. No. I think the home field advantage screwed Cincinnati on that one call where the referee couldn't whistle loud enough to get the play dead, But then it ended up working out in their favor because the second third down attempt, it went from an incomplete pass to a sack, and then they had a penalty. And so it's just had illegal hands to the face.
Yeah. And so, Drew, there's few certainties in life. There's death, there's taxes, and there's Eli Apple screwing up on the big stage. We talked about this last week on the podcast.
That was
all up turfing on Twitter. And then on that play, on that redone third down, he held and get Kansas City that first down. And so he didn't get cooked per se, but he got handsy at the wrong time, got called for that hold, and now joins his Buffalo brethren that he loved to call out on Twitter in Cabo for the offseason, which cracks me up. Those Cabo jokes always make me laugh.
And he held Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and I know he was the best receiver they had left, but, I mean, if you can't stay in front of him, I mean, he's their fourth option, Right. And so it just – the moral of the story is, my man, just keep your mouth shut,
That's it. We talked about this last week. Like, he gets all high and mighty on Twitter.
If you suck, nobody knows your name unless you talk,
That's it. And we got this cycle, right? We got Eli Apple or the Bengals win in spite of him. He hops on Twitter. He gets cocky. His mom has to defend him. He gets cooked / gets a poorly timed penalty, and the Bengals lose.
Right. It's Newton's seventh law, I believe. It's the life cycle of an Eli Apple.
Yeah, so we've got our Super Bowl set now. We'll do a more in-depth dive next week as we prep for the Super Bowl. But I like it. It's a good matchup. Eagles, Chiefs. I think it's going to be a good Super Bowl. I'm glad it's 2 weeks away, so Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce can get a little bit more healthy and be ready to go.
Yeah, I don't. We talked off air after that game about who we want to win, and my first reaction was the Eagles because of AJ Brown, but I still just have so much hatred for them going back to my Eli Manning Giants games. And I just has there been an easier path to a Super Bowl before than what Philly has just went through? They got a
No.
bye, then they played the Giants, and then they played a the San Francisco 49ers, who lost their third string starting quarterback after one drive. I mean, yeah, they looked good doing it. And like I've said 100 times, good teams beat bad teams badly. And that's what they've
Mm-hmm.
done. Like
Sure.
they can't do anything more than what they've done. Man, I just look at
Sure.
that and I'm just like, they don't have the scars yet. And Kansas City does. Never, 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 never bet against Kansas City. And if that Philadelphia Eagles line gets up to Philly +3, I'm liable to go across the state border and put my house on Kansas City just because
Yeah.
Mahomes you look at their rosters and Philly probably has a better roster. I'd say definitely has a better roster, but Kansas City has Patrick Mahomes and they have Travis Kelce and they've got Chris Jones and they are just freaking good. And don't ever bet against Patrick Mahomes.
No, and they got the experience. They've been there. This is not, this is first time for Jalen Hurts, first time for A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith has the opportunity to be only the fourth player in professional sports football history to win a Heisman, a national championship, and a Super Bowl. So that's, it's a neat little stat for a little skinny Devontae from Amite City, Louisiana. But I agree. The Chiefs got the dogs, man.
A Heisman, a Natty, and a Super Bowl.
A Super Bowl.
Do you know the
four players?
Do you know the players? Because that'd be a good bar trivia question I'd like to go for. But if you don't know the answers, we're not going to look them up. Maybe maybe that's your homework.
Stay tuned for next week. We'll come up with those 4 players.
Do your homework on that one. We'll guess on
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a good little stat, but yeah, we'll dive deep into the Super Bowl next week. I think it would be remiss not to talk about a little NFL news that happened today. 2 big hires in the AFC. First of all, D'Amico Ryans, who did an incredible job as the San Francisco DC. No time after they got eliminated from the playoffs and accepting a 6-year deal to be the head coach of the Houston Texans, where he was the defensive rookie of the year, all-pro linebacker for a number of years in his career there after he was an All-American in Alabama. I met him at a football camp he hosted at Northeast. Just a really nice guy, easy guy to root for, and he had a defense strong in San Fran. So curious to see what he can do. He's going to have to make some good hires at OC, but I like the hire for Houston. He's young, he's hungry, he's talented, and could be a good pickup for them. I hate that it's in our division, but it's a good pickup, I think, for Houston and a good step up for D'Amico Ryans for sure. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, very rarely. It seems like a lot of times, and maybe I'm just not as in tune with coordinators as much in the NFL as maybe I used to be. But very rarely do you see somebody make the trajectory that he has. Whereas I couldn't tell you everybody is OC, but I can tell you that D'Amico Ryans was highly thought of as a linebackers coach. And then when he got the defensive coordinator job, they're like, man, that's a great hire. And then he's been a great defensive coordinator. And now he's made that natural progression to head coach. And everybody's like, man, this guy, it just feels like he's made to be a head coach. And you're talking about this team was Lovie Smith away from having the number 1 pick in the draft. But even having the number 2 pick of the draft, they've got the biggest war chest as far as picks that you can ask for a head coach coming in. You can make the argument, even though they went 2-15 this year, that's the most desirable job for a coach because it's in a weak division, and you've got just a basket full of picks from that Deshaun Watson trade. Good picks. And so, and you've got, you don't have the incumbent quarterbacks. You can go kind of handpick who you want to lead your franchise. And then you've got a bunch of picks to build around him. And, they gave him a 6-year contract, which is longer than most people get as a new head coach, especially an unproven head coach. And so, and he is a former Texan. He was on those original Texans teams. And so for him, he's going to have the cachet with the fan base and hopefully with the ownership, so where that he will have the leverage and the time to turn this thing around.
Yeah, I agree. Phenomenal hire for Houston. Got an opportunity to really turn it around, and I'll be
For
even
a
though they're a division.
Yeah. That has just been trash since its inception.
Yeah. And I even though they're in our division, I will be rooting for D'Amico because he's an easy guy to root for. Players love playing for him. He's a great coach. I think he'll do a good job there for sure.
Where did he play college ball at? Alabama?
He was the All-American in Alabama.
Was that
on those
pre-Saban?
Yeah, that was the Franchione and the Shula era.
Okay. Yeah.
No, so it was the Shula era. He was there like 04. He graduated, I think, in 04, somewhere right in there. Okay. But then in the big splash of the day, the Denver Broncos have hired the Fox NFL show, former head man, a Super Bowl winning coach in New Orleans. They had to negotiate a buyout or a trade clause with New Orleans team, and he is now paired up with Danger Russ Wilson in Denver to see if he can turn around that sinking ship. What was a dumpster fire this year.
And this is a great hire. I mean, I rooted for Sean Payton since 06. I believe it was Katrina was in 05, so I guess that's the year that he got the job. Him and Drew Brees came over right after Katrina. And rarely do you mean when you talk about offensive gurus and geniuses, you look at the lifespan of even Wonder Boy at Dallas. Remind me, I've just went blank. Kellen Moore. He was the offensive genius. He was the best to do it. He was the guru, and he's already agreed to part ways with Dallas. And the lifespan of being the guru, as fast as the NFL changes offenses, you can get left behind quick. But Sean Payton and Drew Brees stayed at the forefront of offensive football for over a decade. And he gave it up once Drew Brees gave it up, because once you've had the run you've had with Drew Brees, why would you want to start over? And, there's more to that story we've touched on before where he was colluding with Tom Brady to get to Miami. But has sustained just an incredible a reputation as an offensive coach and a great quarterbacks coach. And he goes to Denver, where they have decided, and there's really no proof to say otherwise, but they've decided to throw everything at the feet of Nathaniel Hackett. He's gone after 1 year. Widely regarded as the worst year of coaching in NFL history. I mean, did a terrible job. And they've decided that, of course, what other option do they have? I mean, you've got to pay Russell Wilson one way or the other. So they have thrown him to the wolves and saying, we're going to find out how good you are. Have you lost a step, or are you Russell Wilson that we've, seen perform at Seattle for a decade and been a top quarterback in the NFL for over a decade? So we're going to give you Sean Payton, and if he can't fix you, then you're broken. And so, Denver was a sexy pick for a Super Bowl contender preseason, and I don't know if I'd go that far, but I believe if anybody can get it back out of Russell Wilson, it's Sean Payton.
Yeah, I agree.
He's got weapons too.
He does.
Judy and Cortland Sutton.
They're fairly talented. They've got a good young tight end. They're fairly talented. Defense is going to need some help. They need a little help on the offensive line, but he's got some decent weapons. And you're right. This is them saying, Russ, if you're going to cook, it's now. We're going to give you what you need to succeed. And if this ain't it, then we're going to have to cut bait. But I think it's a phenomenal hire in what's a fairly strong division with Kansas City, the Chargers and the Raiders there. I think it'll help kind of lift them up into that second position. And if anybody can turn around, it's going to be Sean Payton. He's got the track record. I think it'll be a good hire.
Yeah. It makes me wonder if Sean McVay is I'm sorry. I'm in the wrong division. Anyways, that's the AFC. But yeah, so Denver's got that. I've talked about it with the Nuggets, and they've got that built-in home field advantage being a mile high. And because it's hard to play there, it's hard to get adjusted there. And so I'm a Sean Payton believer. I hope the Saints got everything they could out of Denver. They haven't announced like the contract isn't official yet, so it hasn't leaked out what compensation the Saints are going to get for him. But I mean, I hope you get a second round pick. I mean, something valuable for him. I mean, he's still under contract, so he's got to be traded. Or, the Mickey Loomis, the Saints GM, came out and said, we're treating Sean Payton as an asset just like we do any other player. I mean, he's under contract. He's, for lack of a better word, and this isn't a quote, he's our property, so you're going to have to buy him from us,
Right. Yeah, and so, I agree. Hopefully they get something good back, and I think it's a good fit for sure. But we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about our Memphis Grizzlies for a little bit, getting back on our winning ways, and nothing cures a bunch of road woes like a homestand. Grizzlies came back in dramatic fashion and got a big win on Sunday. As we talked about earlier, watching the late game, Grizz got a good win over a pesky Pacers team that we kind of had a slow start with, but picked up late and found a way to get a win, Drew.
Yeah, I mean, the Grizzlies had a rough go of it. They lost 5 in a row they went 0-5 on a 5-game homestand, 2 of which the games were duds and 3 were down to the wire. And I mean, we just didn't get the bounces how we wanted them. And sure, there were slumps there, but a 5-game losing streak has looked a lot worse before. And like you said, the cure was a game at home where they're 21-3 on the year, I believe, or 20-3 on the year so far at home. 20-3 at home, and so that cured it. And Indiana popped them in the mouth quick, and I was real nervous about it. But in fact, it was going on. It tipped off about the same time as the Kansas City-Cincinnati game, and so I was like, I'm not going to keep up with the Grizzlies getting run out for a 6th consecutive loss. I'm going to just keep up with the score and put all my time and energy into enjoying this Kansas City and Cincinnati game. But then I got notified that start the third quarter, they went from 13 down to 1 up. And so I was back in, and they just really put the pedal to the metal and choked them out in that fourth quarter. And Ja had a triple-double, and Jaren had 20. I believe Jaren had 27. Ja had 28. What was crazy, and it's the first time this year that it's happened, Ja played 41 minutes and Jaren played 38 minutes for a man who is just being barbecued by the media, saying he's got that reputation of fouling out every game, and it's just not true. He played 38 minutes, and Taylor Jenkins, whether he wants to admit it or not, treated that game as a must-win game. You don't play Ja for 41 and Jaren for 38 minutes on a Sunday night at 5 o'clock against Indiana unless you consider that a must-win, gotta-have game. And they got it.
Yeah, and it wasn't it was really the John Jaren show. We got nothing from Dylan again. Zay struggling, shots weren't falling. Tyus had not one of his better nights. Like, it just was not a great all-around team game, and John Jaren just had to take over. You hate to see, like you said, us using him that much in a game against Indiana at 5 o'clock Sunday, but we needed the victory, and our horses stepped up. Got a good starting. BC started in place of Steven Adams. He had 13. The only other Grizz in double figures were David Roddy off the bench, who had a very good basketball game. Give credit where credit's good. He stepped up. He played solid defense. He got big buckets when they mattered. And then Tyus, the double, he scores double figures just about every night when he's out there. 10 points off the bench. But again, it wasn't a pretty team win, but our team stepped up when we needed them. And Jaren was just incredible, blocking shots all over the court, really just altering every single possession, frustrating Indiana's bigs. We looked the part, and hopefully that'll continue. We've got a home game tomorrow night against Portland, as we talked about. We got a game at Cleveland on the back-to-back before returning home against the Raptors on Sunday. So there should be at least 2 winnable games. That Cleveland on a back-to-back is going to be tough, but I heard today, I was listening to some stuff about the Grizz on my drive down here, and, we'll get Danny Green back tomorrow night. It'll be his first game in a Grizzlies uniform. And then with a back-to-back, he won't play Thursday, but there are some rumblings that Desmond Bane could be back for that game in Cleveland on Thursday. So fingers crossed we get to see Bane back in a Grizzlies uniform Thursday night in Cleveland.
Well, and you know how I like to track injury reports for the Grizzlies and kind of feel like I've got a pretty good feel on what's happening. They did release the injury report for tomorrow night, and Danny Green, which we know was playing, he's came out and said he's playing, and Desmond Bain are both listed as questionable. So I think that's good signs that they will at least be back. If they want to stagger them, which I wouldn't blame them, have Danny play tomorrow night and then have Dez play on Thursday night, then, I can see that. But questionable typically means that, questionable the day before, they're going to really give them an opportunity to play on Wednesday nights.
And I hope so, man. I'm traveled all this way, going over there to watch him play. I'd love to see Desmond suit up. But again, even if they staggered him from a long-term perspective, I don't hate that plan. Give Danny a night off and let Desmond step in and take over. But now's the time we'll find out what we have with Danny Green. Is he going to be a trade piece, or is he going to be that 3-and-wing defense guy that we need to help push us into that next tier of teams and help us on our hunt for the playoffs?
Yeah, I'm going to say that I'm drifting more, and we'll see. I will have a more firm opinion on what I think we should do middle of February at the trade deadline after I see Danny for a couple of games. But seeing how we shoot the ball, I think that you can't really give up Danny Green unless you get just a shooter that is proven to shoot at an elite clip that you can play heavy minutes. If you don't do that, then I think you got to keep him and get another B-list shooter to go along to add bench depth.
Yeah, which we'll get into more trade talk as we get closer to the deadline. I agree. I think we should kind of see what we have. I think there are some players out there that we can go for. We've talked about OG, we've talked about Beasley, we've talked about Gary Trent Jr. on this podcast, and I think there's some options out there. But I still feel like, and I heard it, we are the best rebuilding team in the NBA. I don't know that we're going to make a move. It'd be nice, to do that, but this team is still looking in the future. We're ahead of schedule. I think we're still, as the front office sees it, based on their move, we're still a couple of years away from a huge championship run. And, I don't know that we'll make some trades, but I think it all kind of starts and finishes with what we have in Danny Green.
I hope that they don't think that we're a couple years away. I hope they, instead of trying to put your best foot forward in 2 years, I hope they're doing whatever they can to lengthen the window that's wide open right now. This is the first year. Last year, we were the 2 seed in the West, and if we would have won the whole thing, it would have been a shock to everybody, including me. We had the second best record in the NBA. We were the 2 seed in the West, but we weren't ready yet. This year, even though the team hasn't changed much from last year to this year, it's another year with the same guys. And so I think that the window is wide open for us in the West. I mean, you look, the best team in the West is Denver, and they haven't proven that they can do it either. And so I think that the front office should be trying to lengthen the window instead of trying to put all your best push. Don't wait 2 years to push all your chips in the middle. Do what you can. Maybe not push your chips don't go all in on this year, but do what you can to maximize this year while also extending that window, because when that jaw extension kicks in and then you're going to have to pay Dez his extension, which they're going to do, money's going to get hard to come by now. So lengthen the window instead of, kicking the can down the road.
I don't disagree. It's like I said last week, man, verbatim, like, I hope we don't look down the road. We look back and go, that was our year, because I think this year could be it. If we get healthy at the right time, we're a 3-and-D guy away from really making some noise. The West is deep this year, but we're just as likely as anybody to come out. You're looking at a pretty tough matchup at that 2-7, but at the end of the day, they're all going to be tough in the West. We all know that the best team is in the East, but the West is deeper. We need all the help we can get to make a deep run, and I think we can do it. I think this is the year that we make that deep playoff run, but we're going to have to pick up somebody that doesn't screw up the team chemistry, like you said, that B level, because like you bring in a guy like OG from Toronto, and he's going to be a guy that could come in and start. I heard today, do you
We lost Rusty there for a second, but I believe what he's getting at here is, do you start Dylan Brooks or do you start OG Anunoby if OG is traded? And what I hope you do there is you do move. I don't know. I go back and forth. Do you want Dylan to be your lockdown defender and then close, depending on the situation, do you close with Dylan or do you close with OG, who is a great defender in his own right, but more of an offensive threat as well? So I guess we'll see. I think Rusty is glitched out on us right now, so I'm going to just go ahead and close down the podcast. I enjoy everybody. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast, and I'm glad that y'all have tuned in for us this long. Stay tuned because me and Rusty are going to be in the same house and